Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Confident Leader Show. Well, thinking differently creates different results. This is part two of our series with Dr. Anthony Adamgbo. He is an organizational development scholar, PhD, that works with companies through transformational change. He received his PhD from Benedictine, and he's also a leadership development consortium in 2014. He's an adjunct professor as well, Webster University, Maryville. He's an entrepreneur and created Excedia Associates in 2020. Welcome, Dr. Bongo.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yes, thanks for joining us. And this series is focusing on finding success in the struggle and specifically how it relates to healthcare today. This is a hot topic. So we want to spend a little time on unpacking some of these things. But first, I want to go back to a little bit of your own story. And I wanted to listeners to go back. And if you don't mind, just sharing some of that we shared in part one a week ago, because it's very intriguing and I want people to hear about some of your struggle and how you found success and how you got to where you are today.
Thank you for that opportunity again. So I am originally from Nigeria, the oil producing area of Nigeria. Um, After years of oil exploitation in that area, the people of that area decided, the Ogoni people decided to start ask questions about the resources and how these resources are being managed. That was inconsistent with the ruling authorities at the time. So there were persecutions and killing, enforced disappearance, and all sort of activities that were inhuman. That resulted to a lot of um, activities that folks like me decided to seek for protection with the United Nations. And so we left the area and sought protection under Article 14 of the United Nations Human Rights Declaration. And here I am today in the United States as a result. We thank God for that long history and all the experiences that will later accumulate into uh, a strength, the type of strength that is actually useful and necessary to confront changes, even organizational changes. Uh, a type of strength that build resilient, a different kind of resilience that empowers you to think differently when it comes to organizational change and um, things that are not consistent with expectation.
Well said. I want to go back to that place where you're in Africa and now you know it's time to get out. I want to capture how you decided to think differently because something kept you in the game. You were on a mission there to change things. What did you hang on to get through that struggle?
You know, when you are confronted with such difficult realities as life or death, you have a few options. And one is to reinforce and to be part of history in a way of casualty. The other one is to retrace back and to re examine other ways of rethinking this reality. And in my own case, fear was not uh, an experience that I took kindly. I look at fear in a very constructive way. And so, yes, it came, but I redirected it into productive endeavor. And so the result is someone that is still living, active, alive, talking to you, as opposed to something else, which nobody know what it would have looked like. So being able to re-examine change in a way that will benefit all is an option that is always there for us.
That's a powerful statement. And you said there's a key word that I think is driving what we call burnout in healthcare, and that's fear. There's a lot of it. Over the pandemic times, we had, the fear of capturing the virus. There was fear of death. There was fear of jobs. There's a fear of health. I mean, there's so many fears that I think are driving not only our economy, but this burnout. And one of the most recent quotes that I pulled out is that burnout in healthcare is like an infection. If it's left untreated, it can spread and affect every aspect of healthcare organizations' operations. And I'd love for you to expand upon that base level of fear and how it's transposing itself inside healthcare right now.
Yeah, is we are in a different world today, different from even when that world was first originally developed in the healthcare sector. That the war actually came from healthcare staff during similar situation. Defined really little bit differently as a state of vital exhaustion in response to chronic organizational stress. That was what it was at that time, which resulted in feelings. There were three different type of feelings that burnout created. One was emotional exhaustion. The other one was depersonalization, and then reduced personal accomplishment, which became the three types of burnout, as some research will classify. Now, more errors, more errors were significantly associated with health practitioners at the time. And today, because of what we have, what COVID has created, I assume the level of error may have doubled. Let's talk a little bit about some of the statistics. 16.6% of all hospital inpatient episode in Australia and 3.7% in America led to harmful adverse event because of burnout and its relation to patient safety. 1 in 20 prescriptions contain an error before the pandemic. 1 in 20. Um, that may have also resulted into some of the fears about vaccine, people not trusting, and then the incorrect news about science by those who are not quite familiar with how things work and how it is working right now based on technology. Errors in error. And this statistics is in the pound in the UK. Error 1.3 billion pound in litigation costs were due to error. 2 billion pounds in additional bed stay annually in the UK were result to this error. So you see how expensive burnout can translate and make even the costs and lives look like. So the burnout result to preventable death and suffering here, I should say globally. It is a serious issue.
Yes, yes. It's even so serious. There's another piece of this. Obviously, when you look at just the healthcare costs, but there's the mental health, the PTSD. When you look at that, depression and post-traumatic stress disorder, because I think there's a lot of people that are suffering from that. Healthcare, even families, the list goes on. How would you approach a system when they want to get a handle on burnout?
Um, it will be a system per se, who um, reduce or eliminate burnout through different approaches. In France and France, there is this notion of a 4-day week, work week, right? The
Mhm.
idea is supposed to give people opportunities to relax, to rest effectively, so that as they come in, they can focus and feel mentally prepared and alert. Now, without that idea of giving employee flexibility for work, flexibility to think about how they impact work, and flexibility to give them the leverage to manage the way they invest in work and time, um, burnout will continue to rise. Um, it is one is a response to organizational stress, a response that we can um, reduce by not engaging in an environment that creates stressful events, that triggers this stress and episodes, especially in the mental health situation like PTSD. Um,
Mhm.
we need to rethink how we create environment, and be more intentional about creating environment that are friendly to folks that are experiencing, mental health, environment that can even reduce or even not eliminate them. We need to give employee the freedom, give them the right and privileges to um, exclude themselves in situations that they believe could trigger this kind of event. What we have now is a situation where they don't have the luxury of getting
Mhm.
themselves ready or examining themselves before they walk into situations, either because of fear of punishment, retaliation, or some other things working in the. So we've gotten one thing COVID remind us is that we should take time to prepare and rethink the environment of work. I
Yes.
think that doing that will help, especially in the mental health, when we think about mental health and burnout.
Yeah, one of the things that I've experienced over this last year, I was working with a large company and working with this company who was in charge of a lot of the clinical trials in another country that
Mm,
had a culture where, women had to do everything and they still had to do everything at home, right? But being
right.
able to provide an environment where people can talk through some of these fears and some of these challenges, but strategies to move forward. I truly believe there's something to be said about small communities where people can speak frankly without this piece of retaliation because or the microaggressions that can come out of that. And, like you said very clearly, sometimes they don't have the luxury of that opportunity unless a company creates that environment. So I'd love to be able to hear some thoughts around, I hear a lot about what companies can't do, some of the things they can do. And I'd love for you to share some of those thoughts.
Yeah, some of the things company can do is to allow for flexibility in the workplace. Um, give employees some luxury of time and freedom to rethink and design their own mental environment for work.
Mm-hmm.
Um, give employee the respect needed to um, appreciate what is going on within them psychologically, and create environment healthy for that translation from stress and fear into productive endeavors. Now, that piece is not always there. Nobody's thinking about it. The yes, sometimes it's like when you are in the middle of a relay race, you re-energize and move and take over the guy that was in front of you, and you keep moving and moving, and then you become the winner. That mental gymnastic is taken away from employee when they are in the middle of this mental fight that could result into collective victories, but because they don't have the resources, the enthusiasm is not there, and sometimes the motivation is lacking,
Hmm.
spiritually, mentally, emotionally, psychosocial, everything is lacking. And
Yes.
we've got to go back and re-energize,
Yes.
re-empower, re-engineer
Yep.
everything to create and to energize and move that into a different level of mental reality and change.
Yes. And I love what you said. It's really important. Inactivity and the pause of not doing anything will cost your organization everything. You
Right.
cannot pause and do nothing. You have to kind of keep moving, right? And taking these small steps. I see a lot of companies who want to take big steps. I used to work for a very large company, but I knew if I was a leader within an organization and I can do a small step with my own team, be able to lead for them. We went back to servant leadership. We talked a lot about this the last first episode that we had, how important that is to create less fear for people to know that you are investing in them. So, no decision is a very costly decision. And a lot of
Mhm,
that goes back to the fear of making a decision, much
mhm,
less of, getting a consortium of what can we do to move forward and getting some of that input from people at all levels within the organization so you can move this at least a little bit, get
mhm.
some momentum behind that. I'd love for you to speak of, some of your experience around the cost of indecisiveness.
Now, you mentioned a very important point there with result to making decision and celebrating small change. You see,
Yes.
one one big concept in yellow belt in regards to process reengineering is to celebrate small change, not
Mhm.
the big one. Every milestone needs to be celebrated, and when that is lacking, we leaders run into a issue of indecision because they think that unless or until it becomes what they classify as big change, decision does not need to be made. No, every milestone um earn and deserve a day in court, right?
Yes.
In the court of decision.
Yes.
So we need to rethink that and to understand that not making decisions sometimes could be a decision also.
Yes.
But in business, we got to make productive decisions, decisions that will impact and impact business, impact the stakeholders, impact those that are impacted by the decision itself, and get the culture ready, redirect every mindset towards re-energizing and moving forward because we have nothing to spare.
No, and that's exactly right. And every person within the organization matters. They
Right.
matter a lot. The voice matters. Doesn't matter what level of in your organization. Everybody has a right to share ideas for things that they need to be changed, some ideas to move. I want to go back to something that you talked about, even looking at the nursing and that work flexibility, right? Even if you make 4 longer days and you try to give people back an extra day, we're still stuck with the same burnout. That's some of the statistics I'm seeing, So I think organizations also need to rethink, okay, well, how can we prevent the burnout so we can create an environment where people feel inspired to come to work versus the dread of going to work because it's going to be another piece of the same thing. We're going to have to think differently about how we're going to approach what people need, but also making that environment safe enough where people can speak up.
Right,
So,
right. The job or task of leadership is to inspire consistently.
yeah.
That of a manager is to persuade. I think those were the argument of Peter Drucker. The task of manager is to persuade, leader is to inspire. Now, you do that every day. You
Mm-hmm.
don't do that yesterday and or in the future. You do that every day, every opportunity you have
Yeah.
with the person, and you also create environment that will do just that for you when you are absent. You see,
Yeah.
individual does not only inspire, the culture of the workplace also inspire and persuade. So how to think about inspiring culture, inspiring environment of work, inspiring leadership,
Mm-hmm.
even when you are not there. How to transfer that inspiration to the next person and let them use that mindset to inspire themselves from the inside out or to persuade themselves to confront those, especially mental challenges and
Right.
obstacles and struggles that we talk about
Right.
is important. You cannot fight a struggle for the person. You have to build and energize, create the person for him or her to fight and win his or her battle, especially those mental ones. And leaders have to be in the forefront of that. Otherwise, it costs the cost for lack of or not knowing what to do
Yes.
fall on everyone. And just like you said, everyone is important. We cannot underestimate it. That's why in diversity we say a multicultural um, experience is the best. You
Yes.
know, the experience of
Yes.
someone who have been to Sweden, Canada, Australia, and now in US is different from somebody who have only been in US.
Mm-hmm.
So travel is another form of education, and that's why we need everybody. You can't underestimate anybody
Mm-hmm.
because you don't know the experience they have
Right.
and how they think about it.
Yeah.
That every team needs to be enriched with
Yeah.
diverse thinking, mindset, and experience. If I look for the person that think differently,
Yes.
look for that.
Yes.
HR should begin to focus on that guy or person that look different
Mm-hmm.
because you, especially when they have this experience and qualification, because
Yeah.
you could be running away from a treasure there.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's the way to do things these days. If there is anything we can thank COVID for, will be to expose us to the fact that even some of the vaccines were created or impacted by
Mm-hmm.
folks that look different from the status quo or the expectation we had in mind. You know, some of the vaccine treatment teams include women that led this campaign and are working in these labs and things like that. So it is important to respect everyone and to bring everyone to the table.
I love that. I love that. I love that. I can't say that enough. I think everybody matters. And if we don't put diverse groups together to be able to talk about experiences and ideas for making things better, we're missing a mark, a huge mark. And I want to kind of wrap up today with a tip that maybe you can share with our listeners about how to help healthcare companies even restore confidence from the public back into their own healthcare system, because that's a challenge too. But it all starts with how do we create this inclusive environment in healthcare so that we can all be a part of that solution. So I'd love to hear your tip.
Yes, thank you. There is in the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, you notice that some of the wisdom with the poor dad person, somebody who has suffered a lot, the rich dad kids may not have because they don't know anything about struggle, right? So, communities that are suffering present to us a lot of strength
Yeah.
because those that are in that community are better equipped to handle some of the stressors that folks that are not in that community cannot or will not experience. So, in trying to heal that community, we need people from these communities who have experienced stress and different things on the table. We need them at the table. We need them be part of the decision about how to help restructure and help the communities that they belong, that they are coming from. We cannot exclude them in senior management, in the treatment plan and team, and think that we can know what the issue is better than they are. No, that's where we miss the point. So respect for every community matter, every community, every person, and we've got to look and see how we can bring everybody to the table when it comes to decisions that affect everybody.
I love it. What I hear and what I'm taking out of today, and it's also my pearl, is that there is strength in the struggle. And we
Right.
have to create an environment out of love for each other to give everybody to be a part of that solution.
Hmm.
Because if we don't, we're restricting change. And when we restrict change, fear creeps in, indecisiveness creeps in, and it costs a lot. So,
Yes.
small things at a time, make small steps. It's your job as a leader to stretch across the table, be a servant leader, and start asking some great questions.
Right.
Thank you today. I greatly appreciate you, Dr. Adamgbo, and I appreciate you being with me today. And we look forward to seeing you next week on our part three series, Finding Success in the Struggle.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Appreciate that.